Hi, I'm Greg Lefebvre, creator and host of the Compulsive Storyteller podcast. Welcome to another segment of Pass the Mic, where we invite talented guests, artists, writers, actors, musicians, and others to join us on the pod and tell a great story and or to chat about the art of storytelling. I'm excited to introduce today's guest, Megan Marod. She's a licensed tour guide and a very successful travel content creator who loves inspiring people to explore the world and learn history. You can find her on Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at The Megan Daily. Okay, Megan, so let's hear your story.
It's interesting telling a story about myself since so much of my job is telling stories of other people and other places. So I work as a New York City tour guide and a travel content creator, but that was not always the case. One of my favorite things, however, about being a tour guide is you get to meet people from all over the world and you see how people from all over the world all see New York City completely differently. They all see New York City completely differently because of their own past life experiences, and that sort of dictates the lenses with which they view the city. So, for example, one of the very first tours I ever gave was to a welder. And all of the questions that they asked was about how the different buildings were welded together or different sculptures were welded together. And I had honestly never thought about how anything was welded together because I am not a welder.
It's interesting. I am a welder. I know 5 different kinds of welding. So yeah, I would have been okay on that tour. So
Yeah, you would have been able to answer all those questions. Another tour I gave a few years in was to a group of people who were here in New York City for an asphalt convention. And all that they cared about was what type of asphalt was used in the different types of roads and streets. And I, again, honestly had never thought about the different types of asphalt that are used in making New York City streets. But apparently, there's a bunch of different types of asphalt, and a lot of science goes into choosing which, type of asphalt goes into any given street. So the New York City that I always viewed was through the lens of a performer. So I originally moved to New York City in 2004, and I came here to do musical theater, opera, and acting. My dream was to be on Broadway, and that was literally the only thing that I saw in New York was Broadway. And my whole life was pretty much dictated by this dream of being on Broadway. I chose my apartment based on which was nearest to the subway lines that would get me to auditions. Where I ate was all near the theater district, near Broadway shows, near where I auditioned, near where I took dance class, near where I took voice lessons. Even though I was working as a tour guide to help pay the bills, what I experienced of the city was really just an actor's New York City, which is a fabulous way of experiencing New York City, but it's just this little tiny sliver of what New York City has to offer. But really, like my whole life was dictated by this dream. And a typical day would be to wake up at something like 4:30 in the morning in a January morning and go and wait outside of an audition center for several hours. They would then open the door. Only the first about 200 people would get seen. So you want to be really early. That's why you show up so early and wait outside the building. And then you often have to wait around all day, like sometimes 7, 8 hours before you ever get to sing or dance. And you've just been sitting in this room and you face a lot of rejection, and you also have some successes, and the successes are wonderful and magical. But that's pretty much your life. You go to bed early, maybe you'll take a dance class in the evening, maybe you'll take a voice lesson, maybe you'll go see a show if you're lucky. But that was basically it. I was just there. I was just in New York City to become a Broadway star. And then the pandemic happened, And suddenly there was no Broadway. There was no theater at all. So what do you do when your entire reason for existence is suddenly taken away? So, people were trying to figure out how to adapt theater to social distancing, doing it online. And we would make these little videos, maybe us singing, maybe us dancing, and post them online and share it and hope that it gave people joy. But then I started to think, what if I combined these like little 1-minute stories with my day job, which was, being a tour guide. And I was even a history major in college. So there's that nice little tie-in there as well. So I started to make these little 1-minute videos. Reels were really, really new. Like they actually were released during the pandemic, Instagram Reels. So I started making these little 1-minute history stories or New York City tour stories. And people really, really loved them, which made me very, very happy. And I realized that I could kind of direct where people looked in New York City, which made me feel very, very powerful. But then also, different aspects of the city began to open up to me. I started receiving invites to go try different restaurants. I started receiving invites to go to different New York City experiences, to go to different press events. The one that I like cherish the most is that I got to watch the Rockefeller Center Christmas tree lighting from the front row in the press booth. And it was the most magical thing to me to get to be front row for the Rockefeller Center Christmas lighting, to get to be one of the very first people to experience an observation deck. And then to realize that I could also help other people who had maybe been, saving up money for years, maybe their entire life, and they were coming to New York City and they were just going to spend 1 week in New York City. And I could help them make the most of that week. And suddenly, the way that I viewed New York City, instead of being so narrow, it just like exploded into this giant, burst of colors and experiences. And none of that would have happened if the pandemic hadn't forced me to look at things in a different way and to try something new. And now it's interesting because, if Broadway called, I would not say no. But I'm still involved with theater. I do a lot of press for theater. I get to help people choose Broadway shows and shine a light on different productions. But I just love how instead of seeing New York City with just one lens, I get to see it with literally millions of people's lenses. And that's my story.
Well, Megan, that was a fantastic, multifaceted story. I really appreciate you coming on Past the Mic.
Thank you for having me.
I'm going to say goodbye now. So, bye-bye.
Bye.
Are you ready to tell your own story on The Compulsive Storyteller? We're launching a new segment of guest storytelling, and we want to hear your stories. Email a voice recording to hello@thecompulsivestoryteller.com. I'll play selected stories on upcoming episodes. Try to be as clear as possible in your recording, and we reserve the right to lightly edit them for length and clarity. Leave your name or contact information in your voicemail or email, and let us know if you'd like the story to be anonymous. I can't wait to hear from you. The Compulsive Storyteller is now co-produced by Greg Lefebvre and Fadia Montserrat, who's also arranged the music and created the special effects. Emily Ramon does design, research, editing, and marketing. Peter Kokoma has made our theme music and for many seasons co-produced the show with me. If If you enjoyed this week's episode, let us know. You can find us on Instagram and Facebook at The Compulsive Storyteller, and we'd love to hear from you. This podcast is independently produced, so we really appreciate all your help and support. Share the show with your friends, subscribe on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and please leave a review. You can also check out our website, thecompulsivestoryteller.com, for more information. Thanks for listening, and if you didn't like this one, the next one will be another story.